Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name is Luke Payson. Welcome back to everyone who's already a subscriber to the channel. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe so you can see more great interviews, including the one coming at you right now. Always an honor to have a first-time guest on the show, and very excited to have professional MMA fighter and first-time guest on the show, Dalton Roadhouse Jones. Welcome, sir.
Yes, nice. Thank you.
Of course. Great having you on the show. You got a big fight, pro fight coming up for 247 Fighting Championships, Brawlenburg 22, June 29th at the Monroeville Convention Center. But we're going to first talk about kind of the past. It's your first time on the show, so I like to give listeners and myself some history. Let's go back to when you were not training MMA. What type of sports or athletics or maybe a different type of martial arts did you do prior to getting into MMA?
So started out football since I could walk. Football's always been like the sport that I started out in, 5 years old all the way till, 12th grade. So until I was 17, 18 years old. I did track and field. I was a sprinter and a thrower. Loved, that little aspect of it. Only did that for high school though. I also started boxing at a capital punishment in Harrisburg at a Central PA. Did that from 16 to 18. Had a pretty successful amateur career as a boxer. Then I joined the Marine Corps. Did that for 4 years, active duty infantry. Got out honorably as a sergeant. Once I got out, I realized like how much ground fighting and stuff we did in the Marine Corps, the McMap and whatnot, was the first time I ever really did anything on the ground because I wasn't a wrestler. I was a football player and a boxer. So after doing a lot of the ground fighting and stuff like that we did in the Marine Corps, I come back to Pennsylvania and I'm like, well, I kind of want to put this all together and see what I can do. So I pick up jiu-jitsu. I find an awesome gym, Harrisburg, BJJ, and judo. And I joined the 3G MMA, mixed martial arts team that we have over there. Met some awesome people. I mean, we have like over 1,000 students there, like
Whoa.
20 black belt instructors. Yeah, I mean, dude, we're a real big school and we're still growing. We have like
Is
five
that
different
one location or more? How many locations?
I want to say 5. I mean, I'm sure one of the owners will correct me if I'm wrong, but there's 2 local ones that I bounce back and forth from. And then there's like 3 more remotely in Central PA, kind of trying to give everybody, whichever one's we have schedules for everything from 6 a.m., noon, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30 classes, and whatever's closest to you, whatever works with your work schedule, we try to accommodate everybody. So I found them, started doing that, started training, and realized like, all right, well, I'm pretty good at this. I'm pretty, decent at this jiu-jitsu stuff. Let me start competing in that. So I started doing multiple jiu-jitsu tournaments, had a pretty successful, white belt, blue belt, I don't know, career, whatever you want to call it. And then I just kind of talked to my coaches and was like, listen, I want to fight. I haven't fought since I was like 17, 16 years old. I was a teenager. I was a kid then in a boxing ring. I was like, let's throw these, 6-ounce, 4-ounce gloves on and see what I can do. And then that's when my amateur career kind of kicked off.
Yeah. And before we get to your undefeated 5-0 amateur career, always want to say thank you for your service to the nation. And if you were combat deployed, a big welcome home to you. That's something that the Vietnam vets really appreciate, the welcome home if you had a combat deployment. So really fantastic. And since you were a non-com, of course, always great when a sergeant, they kind of run the Army as you, sorry, you were in the Marines, run the infantry as you know. So pretty great that you were non-com. What was it like? I know you ended up doing 3 amateur MMA fights just last year in 2023. Was that because that was really when you were starting to dial it in? You had your first amateur fight in 2019 and then probably the Marines after that. So what was it like kind of cranking up the frequency in 2023?
So the one in 2019, it actually never took place. It was supposed to be somewhere in State College, and it got canceled like, I don't know, like 3 weeks out. And that was my first time ever
Oh,
experiencing.
it was.
Yeah, it was my first
It
time
was
ever
canceled.
experiencing.
It's still on your Tapology. I
Yeah,
just looked down and
it's a
saw
canceled
the
bout.
oldest date. I'm so sorry. You did them
Yeah.
all within 2 years. But go ahead. Give us the rundown of
Uh,
the 2019 one.
yeah, so like that got canceled, and that was my first time ever experiencing like, all right, like I started doing the dieting, the cutting, I started a fight camp, and then it just not happening. And I wasn't familiar with that like at all. I mean, like this is the fight game, injuries happen, cards fail, commissioner gets involved, but multiple things can happen. And that was my first time experiencing that. And it just kind of sucked. I was like, well, you know what? Screw this. I'm just gonna, just do jujitsu because I can't cancel that. Only I can cancel that. I'll sign up for the tournament. And then if I can't do it, I can't do it, but I don't have to rely on anybody else. Either I'm going to have, multiple people there or I'm not going to be there, one of the two. So I focused strictly on jujitsu at that point, wrestling and jujitsu and judo and all that good stuff. And then I believe I had my first one in 2021 or 2022 was my actual first fight. That's when I was like started getting back into it and was like, all right, I want to start striking and stuff again. I went back up to Jack and Daryl and Matt and Aaron and all my coaches and was like, hey, I want to get a fight. Let's do this. Like since that 2019 thing didn't work out, I've been coming to MMA consistently. We've been working some things out. Let's try it out. And then that's when I actually made my amateur debut.
That makes sense. And then you did 2 fights in 2022, 3 fights in 2023, undefeated in all of them, 2 finishes, including your last one, which was against a more seasoned in MMA. I know you had a lot of boxing. About how many, I guess it would be like USA boxing
Yeah,
sanctioned boxing fights did you have as a teenager? I know that's long before your development, but
4. I believe it was
okay.
4. Yeah, 3 or
Gotcha.
4.
So that helps with some experience level. When you defeated Lewis Burton, who had 8 fights coming to that fight, to your 4, so it was exactly double in MMA by strikes in round 2. Was that like what clicked that you needed to go pro then, or were you already looking to go pro? Was it really just based on your performance? How did you know that going pro? That was your last amateur fight was practically in the new year. It was mid-December of
Yeah.
2023. Was that kind of the plan the whole time, or how did you know it was time to go pro?
We were kind of like checking the boxes. I mean, as a team, um, just kind of looking at my opponents who I was facing. Like I fought the good wrestlers, I fought the good strikers. And Lewis was probably the most well-rounded opponent that I think I fought, out of my 5 fights. He had the most experience. He was coming from a pretty reputable gym. So throwing him into the mix, he was already their lightweight champion as well for Fight World. So he's already had the belt. He's already experienced, all that hype and whatnot. So bringing him into there, me versus him, and then winning how I won, just kind of capitalized. And my team looked at it like, all right, like Dalton, it's time to go pro. There's nothing left for you here. And on Tapology, I know it's Tapology. It is what it is. It's a hit or miss, but they had me ranked as #1 in the state. And then I was #1 for welterweight and lightweight and #1 for lightweight for the Northeast. So ranked out of like 400 and some people, I
Yeah,
was #1 and #1. So judging and putting all those things together, my team just thought I was ready. And if they thought I was ready, I was ready. Like they tell me to, jump, I say how high, like they're my guys, man.
of course, makes perfect sense. I like to look at. I can't always agree with the topology rating, but certainly with you. 5-0, just taking out an experienced guy. They try to weight the experience level. I would say, generally speaking, amateurs going pro probably should be ranked top 20
Yeah.
in your
I
region, in your
at
state,
least.
in something, depending on, some people in their amateur career pick up some losses as they're learning jujitsu or striking or something, so you never know. But you did have a pro fight. Now, this is interesting because I think this is your attitude and your mindset to take pro fights pretty quick clip. In May 11th, which will be just over, it's not even a month yet, but will be
Yeah.
just over a month. because June 29th is just over a month. That ended up being your first loss, a decision loss. What was that like? Obviously bummed on the loss, but what did you take away from that? And what's your mindset to get right back in there against Tom Kizer? Obviously has 3 pro fights. You're coming in with 1 pro fight experience. What's your mindset both from your debut and then also as we transition to your upcoming Brawl 22 fight versus Kizer?
Yeah, so as a debut, I mean, I was presented a couple options. I had a couple easy options. Now, when we say easy, there are no easy fights. Obviously, and anything can happen, but the matchups were definitely in my favor for multiple of the matchups that were presented to me. And then when I saw my opponent Nico, I knew he was a Division I collegiate wrestler out of Cleveland State University. So and it's Ohio, so it's a pretty big school. I knew he had that level of experience. He was a 4-0 amateur. He was highly ranked out of Ohio. I was like, this is a good matchup. Like, this is going to be a good fight. Not necessarily like I'm an underdog or he's an underdog or one of us is more favored than the other. It was like this one has potential to be a really good fight. And I didn't want like an easy you know what I mean? I didn't want some 1-5 opponent or something like that who's got multiple losses as an amateur. I wanted a good, tough opponent for my debut, and Nico was that guy. And just ultimately that night, he was, the better man, and he won by decision. And that's one of those things you never want to leave it in the decision of the judges. But like I said, unfortunately, that was what happened. It was his night. It sucked. There's an easy way to put it. Getting a pro debut as a loss, coming off of 5-0. My head's obviously was this big, and catching an L right off the bat, being a pro, kind of ruins those chances of ever going undefeated. Every MMA fighter's dream is to have that Khabib record or John Jones record. It's just, it's now that dream of happening it's not there, but. Nonetheless, man, I'm right back on the horse. I took no damage in that fight. It was won strictly by points, like control time. I go down, we get back up, we go back down, we get back up, and just overall takedowns is ultimately how that fight ended up going into
That's
his
the
favor.
Division I wrestler for you
Yeah,
there, and
like we knew that going
hats off to
into
him.
it too. Yeah, like we knew that. It was just one of those things. Like he was kind of playing chess, and I was playing checkers in that moment. He had just a better game plan, so to speak, and he executed it better than I executed mine. Lessons learned. I'm right back at it. Like I said, took no damage at all. Immediately hit up 24/7. They presented me with Tom Kizer. I sent the matchup to my team. My team did their research. They liked it. And here we are.
That's incredible. It's great. It's great that you'll be making your debut for 247 at their huge. You probably didn't know. Most people wouldn't have known. It kind of grew over time when you signed to be one of the pro fights on what at that point was going to be a regular single card event. Brawl 22 was already announced. You're on that. Then they had such a great fan, enthusiasm and ticket sales. They ended up making a 21 and a half card, which will be the noon
I
card.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're on the evening card. So it ends up being a huge fight weekend in Pittsburgh at the Memorial Convention Center. Obviously, for you, it's a big fight because it's a pro fight. Every pro fight's a big fight. It's
Yeah.
also a big fight because this is the most number of pro fights ever on one card for 247. They used to do maybe somewhere between 2 and 4 pro fights, and then amateurs,
Yeah.
of course. But they've been growing over the last 5 years, having just celebrated 5 years in April in their last event. So you're a part of the real growth of the 247, really kind of starting to really explode as far as what type of shows they can put on. What are obviously you already said that you and your team looked at Tom. He is, I believe, a former Division I wrestler out of WVU. I believe that's in his background. I've done quite a few interviews with him on this show, so feel free to watch some of those in retrospect when he talks about stuff. But I know what he just had shared is that he's been focusing on stand-up. Do you, as a pro fighter, focus more on kind of game planning for what you want to bring to your opponent, or just more on improving Dalton Jones? And really, both are fine answers. Some fighters have
Yeah.
different strategies, but what's your mindset coming into this fight? And then how do you see the fight going?
Mindset going to this one is fighting my fight. It's me versus me. The only way I'm losing this fight is if I make the mistake. Plain and simple. Um, I believe that my team has prepared me the best they possibly can. We're still going. I'm 2 fight camps into this. That's kind of the pros are coming off. Such an early, like I
Yeah,
said, right back on the horse is I'm two fight camps leading right into one into the other. So when it comes to being in shape, cardio, strength, everything, it's there. Just got to plug a little mental gaps, honestly, from taking an L like that. That was the worst part. Is it just sucked because I told everyone winning is easy. Getting the congratulations, everyone's there for you. Everyone's posting your pictures, your sponsors and whatnot. But taking an L, waking up that next morning, your phone's just silent. You got your family, a couple close friends that are hitting you up saying, "Hey man, you did a great fight and whatnot," but it sucks. Like that. That's the worst part. So losing's hard. Winning's easy. And I found that out, you know, against Nico. And I lost that fight simply because it was my own doing. There was so many things I could have done, and what if? Well, I should have. It's too late. You get one shot at this thing, and when that cage door closes, me versus the other guy, and ultimately, if you don't show up here, and your things aren't flowing, it's not going to work out. So everything's just got to be right in that moment. And unfortunately for the debut, it wasn't. So going into Tom Kizer, um, that's what I'm focused on, fighting my fight. He wants to wrestle, let's wrestle. You want to stand up and do some Muay Thai, let's stand up and do some Muay Thai. You want to clinch, let's clinch. I'm down to do whatever. Ideally, not letting it go into the judges' hands would be a thing that I'm not trying to see happen. Because like I said, anything can happen with those judges. I was at UFC 302, last night, as I told you about that.
that was pretty
Yeah,
great
one of the
experience, huh?
judges,
What was that like for you?
one of the judges, I don't know if you watched the Sean Strickland fight, but one of the judges, had Sean Strickland losing, I think 4 rounds. And I thought that was crazy. So did Dana White and everybody else I was with. I mean, everyone's going to have their own opinions, but that's what you don't want to see happen. And there's always a chance when it goes to those scorecards that a judge could see something that, nobody else saw, and only those judges' opinions matter. And that's what's going to go on your record, and that's going to determine who gets paid. So
Yeah,
ideally not let that happen.
yeah, exactly. There was CFFC years ago. I don't think it ever went anywhere, but they were, they're a pretty good sized regional promotion out in Atlantic City area, and they
Yeah.
tried. They started having some of their judges as practice. They weren't counting, but they had 3 other judges in a room with no volume and just the TV, but no volume from the TV, no commentator, no crowd, because one of the ideas is uh, most of the time when you know judges are humans. How much are they
Yeah.
taking into account the crowd reactions? Who knows?
Yeah.
The only thing I would say that's bad about judges not being able to hear is I've sat in cage side for a bunch of fights, and I think the way people breathe is important. Fighter wise, it's important for the people, right? But you probably don't score on breathing. But I always try to listen for who's controlling their breathing better as a coach
Yeah.
and as somebody who kind of knows like that's such an important part. And you can cage side kind of tell a difference, which you can't on TV, between a punch that has no like effort behind it and like a thudding punch. And you can't always tell that. But anyhow, there are some attempts. That was an attempt. I know Dana White has talked a lot about the attempt to move away from the 10-9 must system, which was a boxing system from back in your boxing days. That's where they got that. It would almost be more like, what would MMA look like if it was scored more like wrestling, where everything had some level of point? I mean, they've never done it, but it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Your what was the standout moment from your UFC experience? Was this your first UFC experience? And visualization wise, does this now help you with that visualization for yourself in the future at a big show like a UFC or a PFL or something? Are you using your experience for kind of future visualizations?
It was, well, one, so first thing is it was my first time ever being to an MMA event, period. The only time I've ever been to an MMA event was when I'm fighting.
No
Um,
way. What?
yeah. Oh, wait, I'm
Great.
lying. I did go to one of my buddies' fights one time, an Art of War card.
Okay.
That's right. But yeah, so my second time ever going to an MMA event besides the ones that I fight at. Especially, it's UFC 302. There's gold on the line. Um, so that, I mean, it was awesome. Donald Trump showed up, all the
Yeah.
celebrities showed up. Place was absolutely electric. I mean, it was awesome watching in Dustin Poirier's, but like probably he's definitely top three, if not my favorite fighter. Like the way he presents himself, how humble he is, like
Oh
it's
yeah.
kind of the guy that I would like to be like him. If there was a fighter that I wanted to fill his shoes, it's Dustin. And so watching him go out there and possibly have his last dance, it was phenomenal, man. He put up a hell of a show. It was a great fight, great crowd, great everything. And then as far as the future goes, I mean, I guess you could say it's everybody's dream, to be under those type of lights on a main card like that and to fight for the UFC. But one thing at a time. And I'm just I'm riding this wave. Like everyone kept asking me, even after like my third win, they're like, when are you going pro? When are you going pro? I'm like, I'm in no rush, man. I'll fight amateur for the rest of my life. I don't care. I do this simply because I enjoy it. I like fighting. I'm not fighting for the paycheck. I'm not fighting for fame. I'm not fighting for anybody else. I'm fighting because I enjoy doing this stuff. Like it goes hand in hand with what I do for a living too. So it's just the mental, the stress, the coping with everything in life. I love it. That gym is like my brotherhood that I'm missing from the Marine Corps. I go to the gym and I have that brotherhood there. Like they're my boys. I would do anything for them. And that's why I do it. I personally, I really do enjoy doing this stuff. So until I don't enjoy it, I'm gonna keep on fighting. I can go 0-7, man, for all I give a shit. As long as I'm having fun, having a good time, I'm gonna keep fighting. You know.
Well, I think that, I think mentally, in my day job is I'm a licensed professional counselor for the VA for combat vets.
Oh, nice.
And one of the things that just mentally, as somebody who always focuses on sort of the mental health side of things, and I used to coach college track and field. We could do a whole thing just on track and field,
Yeah.
because I know you have that experience. And I used
Yep.
to coach amateur and pro MMA fighters. But one of the things that really is good for you to hear from the mental health side is that you're doing whatever you do. In this case, it's fighting, but you're doing whatever you do because of the fun word to say, intrinsic motivation, right? You do it
Mhm.
because you're intrinsically motivated by your enjoyment of it, by the brotherhood of the gym, by learning, by that's neuroplasticity for the brain, where your
Yeah.
brain is learning new skills. And of course, you learned a lot in the Marines, but there's muscle memory and all that stuff you're building. But one of the things, and I can't say it's bad, but it sets itself up for poor mental health, are fighters or any athlete that's only motivated by that external. And external motivation is for the rewards, for the praise, for the text, for the women, for whatever, for the fame, for the
Yep.
fortune. And obviously, external motivation can be super motivating. I'm not even trying to bash on people that are externally motivated. I just
Yeah.
know as a professional mental health counselor that it sets up a big sort of emotional load when someone struggles or when someone has a loss. This is going over 100 years ago. So, but a long time ago, there was a famous British gold medal champion in the Olympics a while ago named Harold Abrams, and he is quoted. This is sort of the mental game. He is quoted after his first loss ever as a pro. He had never lost amateur as a pro as a runner, and in 100 meters. But anyhow, he said, "I won't run if I can't win." And that was his mindset. His coach said, "You can't win if you don't run," right? Like there's a
Yeah.
balance between if you're externally motivated, at some point, failure is going to really suck. Failure is going to really suck the willingness to continue. Whereas if you're intrinsically motivated to do something, I don't just mean fighting, I mean morals, family,
In life.
values,
Yeah.
in your case in life, serving the Marines, all of that comes down to intrinsic motivation. So certainly I think that's quite healthy. Like you said, if you go 0-7, that's not going to be your career at 0-7, but it's going to be something that you still enjoy doing until you don't anymore. And we've seen it. Flip side, sometimes athletes are intrinsically motivated. Their career goes swimmingly well, and at one point they're no longer internally motivated. They need to get out, but they stay in because now they feel stuck. And that's
Yeah.
something that Dana White always says, although I think he talks out of both sides of his mouth, but he will say that anybody that considers retiring should just retire, that MMA is not the sport you should be doing if you're kind of thinking that you could be okay and be out. But then we know he talks people back out of retirement all the time, and who knows. But still, really cool mindset to have. Do you have any other thoughts coming in to your first 247 event, June 29th? People that are not going to be able to make the trip in should be getting pay-per-view tickets. Download the 247 Live app now. 247 Fighting Championships actually has their own app, which I think is really cool. Download that app. It'll give you some free things that people can look at, and then they can get a pay-per-view and give you credit for it. Or if they're coming in person, they can go to 247fighting.com and buy a ticket that way. So super exciting all around. How do you want to end it? What are your thoughts? What are your last thoughts to leave it on?
I mean, I'm honored that 247 even hit me up, reached out to me for the opportunity. Anytime you get presented a matchup and everything works out, it's a blessing, And like I said, that very first cancellation, besides that in 2019, all my fights have happened. Both me and my opponent have gone into it healthy. The cards have worked out, and I'm hoping that this one does the same. I hope, Tom stays healthy, and I hope to get to see him on June 29th in that cage when that door closes, and it's me versus him. And that's where I'm at. And just like I said, it's an honor to fight for 247. This is one of their biggest cards, as you said, multiple pros on it. And it is kind of nice. I don't know, it's like a 3.5 hour drive. It's not too far from where I'm located. So I'm sure I'll have probably like 20, maybe 30 people show up, make the drive for me. But other than that, I'm sure everyone else will be tuning in, doing a little watch party. So I can't wait, man. I'm excited. I'm ready to get back in there.
Well, I can't wait for it as well. It's going to be a great doubleheader event. My voice might be even raspier by the time I get to talk to you. But at the same time, it's going to be great to meet you in person. I always appreciate somebody coming on the show without first knowing me in person. I feel like it's a little easier if you know me in person, but can't wait to meet you in person and shake your hand. So thanks so much for coming on the show. You've been listening to Luke Basin with first-time guest on the show, Dalton Jones. Big fight coming up June 29th. Pro on the Berg 22 for 247 Fighting Championships. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Take care, sir. Bye-bye.